There has been much controversy surrounding Alistair Begg and the issue of Christians attending gay weddings, and he decides to respond.
How would I ever know that I would set the cat among the pigeons? Because after all, it was a personal conversation between myself and somebody that I've never met in my entire life.
Let's talk about it here on All Things Theology. Cue my theme music.
All things theology, all things theology. We chop it up properly, without an apology. Gotta give that theology to God, hallowed be, cause this is how we do it at All Things Theology.
Yo, grace and peace, and welcome back to an episode of All Things Theology, where this is your host, K-Dub. And today I want to give a charitable response to a pastor I greatly admire, and that is Alistair Begg. Alistair Begg has been influential in my life with topics such as regeneration and the aseity of God, right? And so I deeply respect his ministry, him being a brother in the Lord, but I deeply disagree with something he has recently taught. Just in case you're not familiar with all the controversy going on, Alistair Begg, though he says homosexuality is wrong, and I want to rightly attribute his position, he says that is wrong. You know, you cannot affirm this. He says, on the other hand, we should love them, and it is okay to go to a LGBT wedding. Let's play that here.
And in very specific areas this comes across. I mean, you and I know that we field questions all the time that go along the lines of, my grandson is about to be married to a transgender person, and I don't know what to do about this, and I'm calling to ask you to tell me what to do, which is a huge responsibility. And in a conversation like that just a few days ago, and people may not like this answer, but I asked the grandmother, does your grandson understand your belief in Jesus? Yes. Does your grandson understand that your belief in Jesus makes it such that you can't countenance in any affirming way the choices that he has made in life? Yes. I said, well then okay, as long as he knows that, then I suggest that you do go to the ceremony, and I suggest that you buy them a gift. She said, what? She was caught off guard. I said, well, here's the thing. You're not going to, your love for them may catch them off guard, but your absence will simply reinforce the fact that they said these people are what I always thought, judgmental, critical, unprepared to countenance anything. And it is a fine line, isn't it? It really is. And people need to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling. But I think we're going to take that risk. We're going to have to take that risk a lot more if we want to build bridges into the hearts and lives of those who don't understand Jesus and don't understand that he is a king.
And I totally disagree with what he's saying, but there's been many responses, and I think some have been just uncharitable. Some have been charitable, rightly pinning the issue at hand. And I want to give my response, weigh my hat in on this issue, because he has responded to others, and he is still, being staunch in his position. I think it is compromised, and I ultimately think his position is pragmatic. It is not a biblical one, and I want to do two things. I want to, give you what I believe is the biblical position on this issue, but also teach others how we are to graciously disagree. So I want to model both of those as best I can in this video. So with that said, let's hear his recent sermon on this issue, and let's dive into it.
Kind of love that is only possible as God enables us by the Holy Spirit. Love your neighbor as yourself, when the category of neighbor includes everyone you meet, including your enemies. To do so is a supernatural action, and it is an action that is proof of our salvation. This is supposed to be an uncomfortable challenge. Quote, it is certainly very uncomfortable to me.
Now, I think he's reading from a book recently written, and that's kind of the context. So I'm going to let him kind of get back into the context of things, and then I'll kind of weigh in my thoughts as well.
I'm saying in the book, here is how I think through what it would mean for me to live out Jesus' command myself. I think of people who are behaving in a way that rejects God and his ways. Now, what you need to know is that when I'm writing this, I am actually dealing with the circumstances that were in our minds when we studied Romans chapter 1. The reality of the finger in the face of God that is represented in those who have turned their backs on God, even to the point of their own sexuality being turned upside down. So when I write the line, I think of people who are behaving in a way that rejects God. That is a comprehensive reality, but this is what is in my mind. Who reject God and his ways. That undermines what God says glues societies and families together. What glues societies and families together? The reality of conjugal love in a heterosexual monogamous marriage that produces children. They reject God, they reject his ways, they do.
Now, I do want to be clear, and I don't think, so we can't straw man him, right? We disagree with his conclusion. But he's very clear right there that homosexuality is a rejection of God, rejection of his ways. And so I think we need to start there, okay? That Alistair Begg is not saying, hey, because, he's in his mind, right? We're going to get to some conclusions on this. In his mind, he's not saying I'm affirming what they're doing, right? So again, I want to be charitable and listen to what he's saying. But we're going to respond to the obvious disagreement. Let's keep playing here.
Publicly, and they do it in a fashion that makes it absolutely clear that they have no interest in it, while, quotes, mocking Christians as bigots. That's the context. Naturally, I do not like them, quote, but I am called to the supernatural work of loving them, not ignoring them, not avoiding them, but actively seeking to bless them. I am not called to walk on past them like the religious leaders in the parable of the Good Samaritan. No, I am called to be like the Samaritan, who is the classic illustration of loving and lending and doing good without a calculator and without the expectation of a payback.
Yeah. Now, let me just say this. I agree with a lot of that. Obviously, that needs to be expounded on. But yeah, we should love the sinner. But does love mean we go and participate with them? And we're going to get into some, like how that relates to going to a homosexual wedding. I don't see how you can't say you going is an affirmation, right? Because what is happening at a gay wedding? Something that we Christians say is not actually valid. We would say, hey, look, this is not actual a marriage. So your participation in this is seen by them as a blessing, as a, hey, you are affirming, you giving a gift. What is the gift for? Their union and their congratulations. Me and a family, we talked about this the other day. I could not give anything that showed any kind of blessing to their marriage. That means a cake, a gift, my participation, congratulations. None of that is going to be offered because I reject what is being done. And under the name of God, might I add. So none of that is going to get my congratulatory acts or verbal statements. Right. I mean, when people came to my wedding, they gave gifts, they gave participation because they were standing in agreement with what was happening there. So Alistair Begg would say, hey, yes, I'm doing all that, but I'm not standing in agreement. How not? Right. But we're going to allow him to kind of expound on the statements he said to this grandmother. Let's hear him out there.
Now, that is then the context when a grandmother phones me up in tears and gravely concerned for the circumstances in relationship to one of our grandchildren. I'm not quoting the book to her, I'm only responding to her. She wrote a long letter. It sat on my desk for a long time. This happens to us all as pastors all the time. And on that occasion, when I listened to her talk, my great concern was for her and for her relationship with her granddaughter. I wasn't thinking about the nature of the circumstances in that moment of time. All I was thinking about was how can I help this grandmother not to lose her granddaughter who has already publicly turned her back on God and her back on God's design and in every other way.
Now, I do think if you go listen to the clip, I do think Begg knew his answer was not popular and that it would receive some pushback. I just don't think he thought it would receive this much. I don't think he could anticipate this many people hearing it, but he definitely knew his answer was not popular or acceptable in many of Reformed circles. He says, hey, he was concerned about their relationship, and understandable as a pastor. But my friend Begg, you gave bad counsel. Why do I say that? You gave bad counsel? Well, because it contradicts the Bible. We do not place our relationships above the Word of God. Matter of fact, many times, because of our Christian faith, because of our Christian ethics, we'll lose these relationships. Matter of fact, Jesus literally taught that in Luke chapter 12. He says, Do you think I have come to give peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. For from now on in one house there will be 5 divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. This is the cost of discipleship, that following Christ, saying, hey, look, I not only do I not affirm your rebellion against God, I in no way can give any resemblance of participation in it. Guess what? Unfortunately, as best of our ability, that relationship may be lost. Not because we've broken it off. Generally, it's because they've broken it off. We've just stated, hey, we can't participate. Hey, I'm willing to love you. I'll be here, but I can't join in with the things you do. And this goes for any sinner, any sin. I can't join in with a bunch of thieves getting together, planning their demise on how they're going to rob banks. I can't get together with a bunch of adulterers, getting together how they're going to commit adultery. Look, no thanks. Don't join me in on it, right? Now, if they're just wanting to come together to, hang out or, especially as family members, you can't avoid family, but to join in, to celebrate this act of rebellion, absolutely not, sir. And this is what ultimately, Begg's statements is rooted in pragmatism, not biblical revelation. Pragmatism says, hey, what works? The gospel, we can do that, but that's not working as best as me just kind of being there, right? I'll be their friend to the end, right? And I'm not disagreeing with that notion, but we have to ask the question, what does love look like biblically? Again, I would argue biblically, it's not even given the appearance of evil, right? And so let's continue more with what he has to say.
And in the course of that conversation, I said, one of the ways in which to catch your granddaughter off guard is actually do the opposite of what she expects you to do.
And I think that's the problem. We're not called just to catch people off guard, right? It's like, oh man, I didn't think you would do that. We're called to be biblical, right? We're called to be Christians. In this sermon, there was a lot of pragmatism. There were some shots thrown at, us who disagree with him, Pharisees, things like that, just being hyper fundamental, not being balanced. Okay, look, I'll let those shots roll off the chin for a second. But I think the Bible is on my side when it comes to this issue. We cannot join in with rebellion. Now, Begg has already confessed that the act is rebellion. That's why I say Begg is being highly inconsistent. Begg is being an inconsistent brother to where he can say, yes, it is rebellion, but a great act of love is joining in that. No, sir. No, sir. I highly disagree with that. No, we're not pragmatists. We're not just, hey, whatever works, whatever can get them in. No, absolutely not. Again, we're not called to just shock people and just do the opposite of what they think. Because, this person knows in their mind, that homosexual knows in their mind, you disagree with it and you can't join. And then you show up, they may be thinking, you're a compromiser. What about that thought, right?
What does she expect you to do? Avoid her? Stay away from her? Don't get contaminated by the situation?
Well, we got to nuance this when it comes to the wedding. I don't think it's not that we're just avoiding people. We're avoiding their acts when they're sinful acts. So the marriage, the quote unquote marriage, right? This wedding that they're attempting. I cannot join that. I won't avoid you. You called me, a couple days after. Hey, I'd answer the phone, talk to you. Hey, what do you need? What do you need? But when it comes to their acts, I'm same. If an unbelieving friend, if one of my brothers, let's say they were an unbeliever, they called me and say, "Hey, will you go to the club with me?" No. But if they invited me to a family reunion, yes. You see, there's nuance and there's context to this, right? Sinful acts, we don't join. Just hanging out, hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I said, well, isn't that interesting? So what would happen if you actually went? Well,
my conscience would be violated and firing off. I would say that,
gave great pause. And I said, but you should talk to your husband. You got to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And those were all the caveats that went around the conversation.
And I do respect that you said that. Hey, she needs to, get approval with this, with her husband. But her pastor, her shepherd, one who's giving account for her soul, is already given the approval, and possibly influence how the husband would ask. So I'm grateful that you caveat it with that. But you've already given your thumb of approval.
But then I said, well, I think you should go. And why don't you give her a gift? Well, how would I ever know that would set the cat among the pigeons? Because after all, it was a personal conversation between myself and somebody that I've never met in my entire life.
Yeah, but you've conveyed this to the public. So now you've you brought everybody in on it, So, I mean, I understand the sentiment of just having this private conversation, but you've given out to the public now, right?
It was born out of the kind of conviction that I was personally reckoning with myself. I don't like this. I'm opposed to this. I do not endorse this. I have no interest in this. But this is my granddaughter. Now, it's that context then that gave rise to that.
And so, yeah, there's much more that could be said from that sermon. And I understand the context. But again, Luke 12, some relationships will fall by the wayside because of our commitment to the lordship of Jesus Christ. By the grace of God, I won't attend a gay wedding. Why? Because I'm just extremely hateful towards homosexuals? No, because I am committed to what the Bible says about their rebellion. It is rebellion. Therefore, I cannot join in. I can't participate. I can't even give the appearance that I am. Right. And so I wanted to respond to Begg, hopefully provide some charity behind this, because if you listen to what he's saying, it's very clear that it is rebellion. But he's trying to have this nuanced response that, well, it's rebellion, but you still can go. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that's the case. And I'm praying for Begg. I think we all should pray for Begg. He's a good brother. He's solid teaching. I was like a little surprised that he would say some of these things, And so hopefully this was helpful in providing a biblical response to the issue at hand, but also how to deal with a brother. Pray for Begg, pray for the church, and, again, the people who are influencing, who now may be subject to going because they heard him, right? There's much more bigger at stake. And so hopefully this was helpful. Till the next time, grace and peace. Yo, grace and peace. Thank you for watching another episode of All Things Theology. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go on and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. I promise to give you weekly lives, videos, interactions, exposing false teachers, sharing with you, the viewer, my theological beliefs, things about the culture, and the Bible. So if you're here for that, come on and join us. Also, if you would like to support this channel financially, you can do so by becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member. Links are in the description below. You can see content before it drops. You can also have Q&A sessions with also other Patreon members, YouTube members as well. So if you would like that, hit the description link in below.